the first thing that you're going to want to write down today is humanism. Okay, so humanism, it kind of goes along with the Renaissance ideas that we've already talked about with the importance of individuals, individual achievement, that humans can do things. If you look at the word humanism, if you ever look at a word in the last three letters are ISM, it means belief in. So it's a belief in humans or individual human achievement. And this was all part of the Renaissance way of thinking, that individual humans can do great things and cool things and have achievement. Okay? So let's talk some more about the humans and all that. Okay. So we also say that the Renaissance was a time of worldly things. The fancy word for worldly is secular. So secular as opposed to heavenly. Okay, so we live here on earth. This is worldly. This is secular. In heaven, that's God. Okay, so where do we use the term secular today? Strangely enough, the one time you almost always hear the word today is we talk about music. So like if you go to church, you listen to church music. But if you're at church and somebody just so happens to play like a song you hear on ZYP, that's called secular music. Okay, so that's where that term is used. But in the Renaissance, the term secular meant worldly. So this is kind of what we're talking about with secular. See, during the Middle Ages, and this is kind of like your teacher's take on the Middle Ages. During the Middle Ages, people sort of moped around. It was kind of like, you know, we're here, it's the Middle Ages, Roman Empire's destroyed. Black Plague is coming in a few years, you know, the Black Plague's coming. And it was part of it, but people just moped around. And it was, nobody thought about being happy. Because the church told you, just go ahead and mope around, your happiness will come when you get to heaven. And this is what the church taught in the Middle Ages. So people moped around and were like, you know, I don't have to be happy. I just have to wait till I die, and then I'll be in heaven. I'll be super happy, do anything I want to do. And that was kind of the mentality. Now, that's my take on it. Just try to wrap your brain around that because of this secular. So in the Renaissance, people started questioning that. Remember, one of the components of the Renaissance was questioning institutions. It says, why do we have to mope around? I mean, in the Bible it says, be joyous. Someplace, I'm not sure, I'm not here. I don't know exactly where it says it in the New Testament. There's someplace in there that says be joyful, right? Right. Okay, let's be joyful. Is there anything wrong with being joyful on earth? Not really. You can still be joyful on earth and go to heaven. You don't have to mope around and then get your joy when you die. You can be joyful here and die and be joyful there. So that was part of that whole concept. So people, your book says enjoyed fine foods, homes, clothes. Okay, so put whatever definition you want to, whatever enjoyment is. But we think it's important to be joyful, I think, today. Okay? And this is also a Renaissance thing. This concept of being happy, like it's a Renaissance thing. Like, are you happy? What do we say to each other? Hey, how are you? How you doing? In the Middle Ages, nobody said, how are you? Because nobody cared how you were. It didn't matter. People in the Middle Ages, they didn't care if you were happy or sad, did they? Not really. But in the Renaissance, it was like, okay, we're allowed to be happy. Are you happy? How are you? Maybe that expression, how are you, happened in the Renaissance. Not sure. But it's just the way of thinking. All right, next. The word patron. You need to write down the word patron. The patron, the one thing you had to do to be a patron, you had to have money. 500 years ago, patrons had money, and they patronized the arts. They got paintings made, they got sculptures made, they spent money on cool architecture, writing, I suppose. Okay. Patrons were government officials that had money, church officials who had money, wealthy merchants who had money, and people who had money who had money. You had to have money to be a patron. It took several years to paint a cool painting. It took several years to sculpt a really cool sculpture. So, like, regular people didn't go to Michelangelo and go, hey, can you come paint my house? But the Pope, he could go to Michelangelo and say, hey, come paint my church. Okay? Do we have patrons today?
There's literally an app or a There's Patreon.
Literally a website called Patreon. And what do you do on Patreon?
You donate to a person and you get things.
You give people money.
Yeah, you give people money that do cool things, right? Okay. That's a great example of being a modern day patron. You don't have to be filthy rich or extremely wealthy to be a patron.
Just donate dollars.
You need to, and now, let me ask you a question. If you go to a movie, are you a patron of the arts?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much you are. Now, that's kind of a modern day patron. Or you could be Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and give millions of dollars to some art something someplace, right? Okay. All right. But back then, you had to have money. Couldn't do it without money. Let's talk about the concept of a Renaissance man. This is a very important concept. And we still use this term today. So let's talk about that. Back in the day, 500 years ago, a Renaissance man was someone who excelled in many different things. So on here it says the classics, art, politics, and athletics. The classics, that's school. Okay? When you see like classics, that's school. History, philosophy, science even, mathematics, that's school. All right? Art, y'all know what art is. Politics, government, community involvement. Athletics, a sport or a lifelong activity, like golf or tennis. Well, they didn't have golf or tennis back then. Fencing maybe, but I don't know what they did back then. Bowling, something. I don't know.
I think golf existed then.
I don't know if golf. Probably. No, I'm not sure about that.
Maybe polo.
Maybe I'm not sure.
Hunting.
You figure that out and report on me on Monday, okay? All right. So there was a guy named Castillon. He wrote a book called the Book of the Courtier, and in his book, he really explained how to be a Renaissance man and how to be a cool Renaissance man. Not everybody can be a Renaissance man. So my next question for you is, what are the components of a modern day Renaissance man / woman high school person? How would any of you be known as a Renaissance person in high school?
Join a bunch of clubs.
Well, a bunch of clubs. Let's get a little more specific. What would you name one thing? Coop, what would you have to do? Math club. Math club's one. Thorn.
Play football.
Play football, something athletic, or some other sport, right? If you're a girl, volleyball or softball, or be a cheer, right? What else?
You just play an instrument like in your own time.
Musical instrument, band. Look, if you did math and you were in a sport and you played a musical instrument, you're on your way to be a Renaissance man. What else? Beta club. You're super smart, right? Or maybe you're even gifted, right? Ooh, you're in gifted. All right, so if you're in beta, you're gifted and you play sport and you're in math club and you're in 4-H. See, there's another one. If you excel in all these areas, you are a Renaissance man. Renaissance man or woman are pretty cool. You have to excel in them. Now, here's the $200 an hour stuff that I'll give to you right now. You kids, you all want to go to college or you wouldn't be sitting in here right now. You all know this is an honors class, right? So you expect to go to college, right? Okay. When you go to college, colleges want Renaissance people. For the most part. If you go to a 4-year college, they want to see that you've done cool things in academics, whatever that is. That you've done some kind of athletic thing, whether you played a sport or whether you just like to play golf or tennis, or maybe you go hiking a lot, or something athletic. They want to see that. They want to see that you've done things like community service. They want to see why, because colleges want a well-rounded person. They don't want somebody colleges don't want somebody that's got a 4.0 and a 30 on the ACT and did nothing else. That's a cookie cutter person. Because here's the deal. In the future, if you can't be creative, you won't have a job. If whatever you do for a living doesn't require creativity, you'll be outsourced to a computer or a robot. Colleges don't want to produce computers and robots. They want creative people to do creative things, and that's what Renaissance people do. They're good at a lot of stuff, and they're creative. So be creative, be interested in more things. Learn how to cook. You might not know how to learn how to cook. Learn how to, I don't know, crochet. I don't know what all there is. But be able to do different things and be creative in what you do. Okay? If you're a football player, study the game, right? Study the game. Find a better way to run whatever your favorite play is, right? Find a better way. Find a better defense to run. You play a musical instrument? What can challenge you to play the next musical instrument? What are you going to do? How can you be creative with that musical instrument? How can you influence other people? Here's the next thing. How can you influence other people with what you do? These are the future things that you kids are going to have to do.
Yeah, you can
Speak up louder because the mic's over here.
okay, well, you can play something you've never played before. Like in my case, I play saxophone, so like I can try and play clarinet or trumpet or trombone or a guitar or something.
Because you want to be creative. You want to keep learning and be creative. You're going to do that your whole life, okay? And that's the future of jobs and education. I'll just let you know. Okay, let's keep moving here. Back in the Renaissance time, your book talks about Renaissance women being more inspiring art than creating art, but I will tell you in this version of the textbook, this is a relatively new textbook, there's a couple names of women artists in here who did great things. I guess, a few years ago, some historians found some women artists because back in the day there was only men artists, but nowadays we know that there were women artists back then. So why do you think we include women artists in our textbooks now when we used to not so much? Don't you girls want to read that there were women artists too, and not just the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle artists? Yeah, there were women artists, so you girls should know that 500 years ago, women painted stuff. Now, we just found out about them a few years ago, but I'll just let you kids know that we raise you girls to do anything a boy can do. You can do anything you want to do, okay? Just because we said that Michelangelo and Donatello and Leonardo and
They literally had the Ninja Turtles in the Renaissance. Like, they were Renaissance Ninja Turtles.
yeah, that's
Leonardo,
good. Right. Yeah, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, Donatello, and Splinter, right?
And I don't know.
I don't know where Splinter's from, but okay, you girls can do anything a boy can do. Do you understand me? That's the way we raise you girls. And if you don't want to do painting, you don't have. I don't know. Anyway, let's keep moving here. Perspective. I'm going to show you what perspective means, and you probably know what it means, but it's just a term that kind of goes along with the Renaissance because it allows the viewer to see things that look like it's in 3 dimensions, okay? Not just a flat surface. I guess in the Middle Ages, everything was 2 dimensions. I don't know. But I'll show you some examples of that. It's much easier to show you examples than... the other thing that's here is it talks about... where are you? There you go. There were religious subjects and like people, but it was still this big religious influence. David was a good. Okay, let's keep going here. All right, so write down Leonardo. Okay, Leonardo. So real quick, I'm just going to wrap this up. You had Leonardo, Mona Lisa, Last Supper, Vitruvian Man. Okay, Michelangelo, and Michelangelo is. Here's Raphael. Raphael is the School of Athens, and that's perspective. And Michelangelo is the Dome of St. Peter's Basilica, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, Pieta, and the Statue of David. I'll come back to you. I've just got to wrap this video up so I can post it and keep it under 15 minutes. And okay, let me pause this.